Now, a new analysis shows that the 6-ton iconic altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge.
Stonehenge always felt like a memory stretched tight across centuries, a monolithic riddle daring us to solve it. Now, for the first time, a remarkably bold breakthrough claims to have cracked one of its deepest enigmas, and the implications feel, in a way, darker than the stones themselves. The mystery that stood for millennia has been upended by a convergence of archaeology, geochemistry, and artificial intelligence, and what emerges is far more unsettling than a simple aha moment. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. At the core of this revelation lies the altar stone, a massive centerpiece of the Stonehenge complex. Long obscured in scholarly debates and guesses, its provenance had been murky. Some believed it came from nearby quarries, others suggested it originated in Wales along with the blue stones. But the AI-assisted analysis, combining geochemical fingerprinting and machine pattern recognition, now points instead to northeast Scotland. That single shift in origin relocates not only a rock, but a civilization's hidden reach and ambition. To untangle how this came to light, one must understand the process. The researchers collected microscopic samples from fragments of the altar stone, mining for trace mineral grains. These minerals, inert over eons yet distinct in their formation environments, form a chemical signature, a geological barcode. Using classical geochemistry and isotopic ratios, they compared these samples with potential source rocks across the British Isles. But that is only half of the discovery. The AI component sifted through thousands of candidate rock profiles, detecting subtle combinations of elemental ratios and trace inclusions that human comparison would overlook. It flagged a match with rocks in the Orcadian Basin region of northeast Scotland, hundreds of kilometers from Salisbury Plain. Once environmental noise and possible contamination were eliminated, cross-validation confirmed the match as the most likely origin. So far, the result echoes recent findings, that the altar stone did not come from Wales, but from Scotland. But what gives this new claim its terrifying edge is how uncomfortably ambitious it makes Neolithic Britain seem. If a stone weighing multiple tons was hauled from northeastern Scotland to Wiltshire, that implies not just local tribe-level effort, but a networked operation spanning hundreds of miles, by sea or river systems, logistical planning, resource allocation, and centralized coordination. The scale of coordination demanded is staggering for a culture we habitually think of as small, rural, rugged, and primitive. Imagine for a moment waves sloshing off a Neolithic boat or barge laden with a gargantuan slab of rock. The sea is unforgiving, the coastlines jagged, tides tricky, navigation uncertain. The journey would require crews, supply nodes, way stations, and risk management at every turn. This was not a pilgrimage or a ritual march. This was statecraft and engineering disguised under the cloak of myth. The AI doesn't just hand us a new origin, it hands us a new narrative of human capacity, and this is only the beginning. The deepest terror in the finding is how it rewrites the scale of possibility for ancient civilizations. If Stonehenge's builders could marshal such reach, what else could they have done? What else did they already do that we never suspected? Perhaps Stonehenge was not a singular freak of daring, but one of many monumental achievements lost to time, waiting to be rediscovered. Perhaps there were entire networks of megalithic works, subterranean engineering, seaborne trade routes, political alliances, and migrations we have dismissed as exaggeration. This new origin idea forces scholars to reconsider everything: the social organization, power structures, communications, wealth distribution, and cultural aspirations of Neolithic Britain. To drag a stone across 750 kilometers or more demands more than brute force. It demands record-keeping, scheduling, resource stockpiling, sacrificial labor, and probably a governing elite capable of vision beyond immediate survival. That reorients our mental picture of the Neolithic period from tribal to proto-state, from local to regional, even continental. And there's a psychological terror in realizing how little we may have known about our ancestors' scope. We assumed that in prehistory, movement was local, influence was limited, and ambitions modest. But if they were already orchestrating continental-scale projects, then our assumption of stunted growth is based on blank spots, not evidence. Entire epics of human cunning, of technological courage, could lie buried beneath layers of soil and stone. The AI's role is what magnifies the threat. Machine pattern recognition doesn't get tired, biased, or complacent. It can find faint signals in noisy data, correlations too subtle for human senses. In this case, it detected a fingerprint, an intersection of trace elements and isotopes, so fine as to elude conventional scrutiny. That means future AI tools might expose more such suppressed truths. Lost empires, vanished trade networks, subterranean cities, or forgotten technologies. The landscape of history, as we know it, could collapse into a more terrifying, more sophisticated tapestry. One cannot help picturing, too, how this reframes Stonehenge itself. It ceases to be just a monument. It becomes a hub in a network, a point in a map of influence and power. The distances stone traveled become proof not of devotional ritual alone, but of command and control. Stonehenge, then, is not just a megalithic circle, but a symbol of centralized energy, of strategic visibility, of identity and dominance. And if that is true for Britons, what about other ancient cultures? If they applied similar ambition, we may have grossly underestimated their reach. Civilizations in the Americas, Africa, the Pacific, all may have done feats beyond our current imagination. The terror vacillates between the past and the future. If we keep discovering that antiquity was as capable as modernity, then our sense of linear progress collapses. Progress might be cyclical. We might be heirs not of steady forward march, but of rise and fall civilizations stretching far beyond current records. Consider also how the finding demands a new lens on environmental impact, resource logistics, and territorial control in prehistory. To move massive stones, those ancient builders had to clear forests, build roads or paths, manage erosion, leverage waterways, perhaps even exploit wind and current. They had to understand mechanics, friction, buoyancy, leverage. They had to operate in inhospitable terrain, marshes, hills, and rivers. That suggests technical knowledge passed down, perhaps lost, perhaps suppressed, perhaps buried as taboo. Civilization might have used environmental engineering centuries before we dared imagine. This shifts the balance between myth and fact. Myths of ancient prowess, of antediluvian empires, of giants and gods commanding earth and sea, these have often been dismissed as overreach. Yet what if beneath myth lay kernels of real exertion, masked by time and intentionally erased? The AI doesn't merely revive a stone's origin, it resurrects the possibility that mythic accounts may exaggerate from truth, not fabricate out of nothing. Another terrifying implication is epistemological. Our methods for dating, sourcing, attributing ancient works may be fundamentally limited. Human imagination tends to map new findings into existing paradigms. But AI has no such constraints. It can force us out of comfortable narratives. If our interpretive frameworks are too rigid, we may overlook the strangeness built into human history. We're apt to dismiss puzzling discoveries as anomalies, when they may instead be signposts to a broader shift. The revelation also casts a shadow over authenticity and authority in archaeology. If machines can reliably reclassify ancient origins, then much of what is accepted today may be overturned tomorrow. Academic consensus, built carefully over decades, might crumble with new signals in dusty databases. The academic world may be forced to accept that many accepted facts are provisional, awaiting better pattern analysis. That destabilizes authority, perhaps even our trust in what museums present, what textbooks claim, what heritage sites proclaim. This is not mere speculation. Already, debates swirl around whether other stones at Stonehenge or at other megalithic sites may also be retracked via AI methods. The altar stone may have been the first, but it might soon be the least surprising. AI may reassign the origin of dozens of such monoliths. Suddenly, regional narratives crumble and continental ones emerge. Then the myth of local tribes giving rise to monuments collapses into planning across seascapes and terrain. And what of the cultural implications for identity and nationalism? If ancient peoples had broader reach than modern nations dare claim, then modern claims to land, heritage, territorial rights become more porous. If ancient networks transcended current borders, then the ancient past is less local and more shared. That might open cultural rethinking and tension over who owns ancient heritage, whose land was built by whom, and how identity is constructed on shaky grounds. On a deeper level, the revelation forces us to rethink time itself. We see progress as linear: Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, classical, medieval, modern. But if in the Stone Age, a culture could transport megaliths over hundreds of miles, then maybe our categorization of Stone Age underestimates the capacities of those ages. Maybe technological ceilings were pushed earlier, stalled, lost, then reinvented. History may be more fractured. The scale of regression and rediscovery can be greater than we allow. The revelation surrounding Stonehenge has already shaken the foundations of what we believe possible in prehistoric Britain, but beneath that shock lies a still deeper unease. The data drawn from the AI analysis has not just traced the altar stone's geological fingerprint. It has awakened something far older in our collective consciousness, a realization that the limits of human capability may have been far wider and more enigmatic than modern science ever dared to assume. What unsettles scholars and dreamers alike is not merely the result of the AI's calculation, but the pattern that seems to emerge beneath it. In examining the implications of a single misplaced stone, the entire fabric of Neolithic human intelligence comes under reevaluation. For centuries, Stonehenge was the monument of mystery, a circle of stones whose alignment with the solstice suggested ritual precision and cosmic devotion. Yet the new findings transform it from an altar of faith into a monument of planning, coordination, and global awareness that transcends any conventional interpretation of primitive culture. The very act of quarrying, moving, and erecting those stones suggests an operational consciousness that was scientific in everything but name. The terrifying beauty of this revelation lies in its implications for hidden knowledge. If an ancient people could measure distances across hundreds of kilometers, select specific geological formations, and orchestrate their transport with no written language or metal tools, then our understanding of what constitutes advanced civilization collapses. The presence of intelligence does not depend solely on technology. It manifests in precision, persistence, and purpose. Stonehenge's builders demonstrated all three to an extent that verges on superhuman. AI's involvement has acted as a mirror held up to humanity's forgotten face. By applying its pattern recognition models, the AI didn't simply identify mineral ratios. It uncovered a web of correlations linking climate data, water routes, and ancient migration paths. When those threads were mapped together, a faint geometry emerged, lines of movement that connected quarries in the north to ritual sites in the south, passing through ancient river systems long buried beneath layers of soil and civilization. This mapping raised questions no human archaeologist had dared to frame. Were these routes accidental? Or had they been part of a larger plan, drawn out with the understanding of terrain, current, and celestial reference points that rival the navigation skills of much later mariners? The more researchers fed data into the system, the stranger it became. The AI began to predict likely locations of intermediary waypoints, areas where temporary settlements or resting platforms could have existed to support the transport of enormous stones. When those coordinates were tested through ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging, subtle disturbances in the soil structure were found, consistent with ancient human activity. These were not random encampments, but stations, precise, measured, positioned according to patterns of distance and elevation that suggest mathematical intentionality. This discovery widens the enigma. How could a society without written symbols calculate or memorize such precision across such breadth? Oral tradition alone cannot sustain multi-generational engineering. The only explanation is that they possessed a system of abstract memory, perhaps carved in wood, etched in bone, or encoded in pattern and ritual, an invisible mathematics expressed through song, dance, or myth. The AI's models showed repeating ratios between site distances that align closely with lunar cycles, tidal patterns, and geometric proportions seen in later sacred architecture. This implies not only astronomical awareness, but a deliberate harmonizing of terrestrial construction with cosmic rhythm. In this sense, the new findings suggest that Stonehenge was more than a ceremonial site. It was a physical map, a record carved into the earth, synchronizing human labor with celestial mechanics. The stones were not random. They were equations expressed in granite. The builders may have conceived of their world as a living organism, where earth, sky, and spirit were joined through calibrated structures. The realization unsettles because it hints that they knew something about the relationship between nature and consciousness that we have since lost. The AI analysis also revealed something stranger, a pattern of mineral selection that cannot be explained by convenience or local availability. The stones chosen contain high concentrations of piezoelectric minerals such as quartz and feldspar, substances that generate electrical charge under pressure. While such knowledge would have been inconceivable by our understanding of Neolithic science, the deliberate preference for these materials suggests an empirical awareness that these stones responded to environmental forces in distinctive ways. Some researchers theorize that the builders may have perceived vibrations, acoustic resonance, or magnetic fields and chosen materials that amplified them. Stonehenge's layout amplifies low-frequency sound waves, a phenomenon measurable today. Could the builders have sensed it, not scientifically but intuitively, and built accordingly? If so, the revelation is more than archaeological. It is metaphysical. The idea that ancient builders aligned their monuments not just with the sun and stars, but with the Earth's subtle energies implies a worldview where consciousness and matter intertwined. This vision terrifies not because it implies magic, but because it implies comprehension, a depth of experiential understanding that bridges physics, art, and spirit. The AI, devoid of emotion, simply outlined the pattern. Humanity, staring at its own reflection, recoiled from the implication that those we call primitive might have known truths that our modern intellects have sterilized. When the first AI models plotted probable routes of transport for the Scottish stones, another anomaly appeared. Along those routes, the program highlighted several locations that, when overlaid on modern maps, correspond with existing megalithic remnants. Standing stones, burial mounds, henges of smaller scale, many of them forgotten by mainstream study. The distances between them formed repeating intervals, as though the landscape itself had been calibrated to a specific harmonic grid. This raised an astonishing hypothesis that Stonehenge was not isolated, but the terminal node of a grand design spanning the British Isles, possibly even extending to continental Europe. Each site, like a note in a symphony, contributed to a resonance pattern echoing through earth and sky. What makes this possibility disturbing is not only its scale, but its coherence. Cultures separated by time and geography appear to have shared an architectural language, one that encodes geometry, astronomy, and geology simultaneously. The AI, analyzing data from multiple megalithic sites, detected near-identical ratios of placement and alignment. It suggested that either information was being transmitted across vast distances, or that disparate groups shared a cognitive framework for perceiving the world, a universal grammar of space. Either conclusion upends our timeline of cultural evolution. The algorithm's ability to interpret these correspondences without preconceived bias exposed something deeper, the possibility that the human brain itself was once tuned differently. The builder's sensitivity to pattern and proportion may have been innate, arising from a way of thinking that we have since diluted. The AI's emotionless logic exposed a forgotten logic of its own, one that viewed the world as an integrated field of symbols rather than discrete facts. In deciphering the stones, the machine inadvertently illuminated the lost syntax of human intuition. From a scientific perspective, what makes the discovery unnerving is how effortlessly the AI cut through centuries of human misinterpretation. Archaeologists, bound by paradigms of material causality, had assumed that the placement of stones must have been governed by functional constraints, what could be moved, shaped, or raised with available tools. The AI, unbound by such assumptions, identified relationships that implied intention beyond mere practicality. To the machine, pattern was not superstition, it was evidence. By its reasoning, the monument's proportions could not be accidental. When human researchers attempted to dismiss these findings as overfitting, the system generated predictive models that successfully located other archaeological features using the same geometric logic. The results were too consistent to ignore. What emerged from this synthesis was an unsettling portrait of ancient intelligence, not technological, but perceptual. These people may have understood reality through a mode of cognition that integrated observation, ritual, and environment seamlessly. Their science was their spirituality. Their architecture was their philosophy rendered in stone. The terror arises because this unity undermines our modern belief in progress. We, who divide knowledge into disciplines, find ourselves outmatched by ancestors who blended intuition and precision into a single act of creation. As the data poured in, the AI reconstructed a possible timeline of activity leading to Stonehenge's final form. It suggested multiple construction phases corresponding to fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, which would have altered navigational cues and climate conditions. The builders seem to adapt to these shifts, altering the orientation of stones to maintain celestial alignment. Such adaptability implies long-term observation, centuries of accumulated measurement encoded through oral continuity. That endurance is almost unthinkable to modern culture, which struggles to preserve even a few generations of institutional memory. If the AI is correct, then the monument represents not a single cultural moment, but a living continuum, sustained through collective discipline and transmitted across generations without written record. The implications border on terrifying. A civilization capable of generational engineering, operating with a consistency that modern societies rarely achieve even with vast infrastructures. It forces us to acknowledge that time itself was perceived differently then, not as a linear rush, but as a cyclical mandate of stewardship. Each generation was a custodian of a cosmic pattern, not a consumer of transient progress. Another unsettling layer of the discovery concerns the resonance patterns between Stonehenge and natural features of the surrounding landscape. When the AI integrated topographical data, it found that the monument's layout mirrors the curvature of distant hills and river bends with astonishing precision. The placement of each trilithon echoes contours visible only from elevated vantage points or through aerial mapping, something the builders could never have physically seen from ground level. This correspondence suggests that they possessed some method of large-scale surveying, or an abstract spatial sense that enabled them to imagine geography as a unified design. This revelation carries a certain quiet horror. It implies that the builders perceived the Earth itself as part of the monument, that Stonehenge was not a structure on the land but a focal point within a vast living organism. Such an understanding turns architecture into a form of communion. The stones, aligned with distant hills and celestial arcs, function as organs in a planetary body, pulsing with seasonal and astronomical rhythm. The monument, in this sense, was not built to honor the cosmos, but to participate in it. If we accept this premise, we must also confront the possibility that the builders operated with an entirely different sense of consciousness, one not separated from the environment but immersed within it. The AI, analyzing linguistic remnants and ethnographic analogies, suggested that the cognitive framework of Neolithic peoples may have integrated self and landscape so tightly that they experienced identity as collective, not individual. The monument, then, was not a product of ego or ambition, but of necessity, an act of aligning human life with cosmic order to maintain equilibrium between forces seen and unseen. The chilling part of this interpretation lies in its echo. Humanity has long sought to reclaim control over nature, yet this revelation suggests that ancient societies had already mastered the art of living in harmony with it, not through domination but through resonance. Our fear arises because such wisdom stands in stark contrast to our own trajectory. The AI's discovery reveals an intelligence that transcended separation. In comparison, our mechanistic worldview feels impoverished, blind to the subtleties those early builders perceived as self-evident. As more models were run, the system began correlating Stonehenge's architectural ratios with frequencies of natural phenomena, seismic patterns, acoustic resonance, and even the hum of the Earth's electromagnetic field. The alignments were uncanny. Certain angles of the stones corresponded with harmonics measurable in local geology. The site, in effect, behaves like a resonant chamber tuned to planetary vibrations. Whether by intuition or design, the builders had created a massive instrument, one that interacts with the Earth's pulse. To the modern mind, this concept borders on mysticism, yet the evidence remains stubbornly physical. Sound waves at specific frequencies amplify within the circle. Magnetic readings fluctuate subtly around key stones. Such phenomena do not require supernatural explanation, only observation and repetition. The AI's analysis confirmed that similar alignments appear at other megalithic sites across the globe. If this was coincidence, it was a remarkably consistent one. If intentional, it indicates a shared recognition of energy and resonance woven into the fabric of ancient construction. Here lies the true source of terror, the possibility that humanity once understood the Earth as a resonant field, and that our ancestors built structures not merely as shelters or shrines, but as instruments of connection. To rediscover that idea through cold machine logic feels like a haunting, the ghost of forgotten knowledge speaking through circuits and code. The ethical implications are equally profound. When AI unveils secrets lost for millennia, it confronts us with our own detachment from origin. Each layer of understanding excavated by machine learning strips away the illusion of modern superiority. We are reminded that intelligence is not a straight ascent, but a shifting tide. The more we peer into the ancient world, the more we see reflections of ourselves, the same curiosity, the same ambition, the same yearning to grasp the hidden structure of existence. What frightens us is the suggestion that those who came before may have succeeded where we only grope in theory. In the aftermath of the AI's findings, researchers began to debate not just what the data revealed, but what it meant. Some saw in it a call to re-examine the definition of civilization. Others perceived an existential warning that knowledge can vanish as easily as it appears. The idea that an advanced cognitive and organizational system could emerge, thrive, and vanish without leaving written trace forces a reckoning with our own fragility. Our records, too, could one day erode, leaving only monuments whose purpose future intelligences might misinterpret. Stonehenge may be less an enigma of the past than a mirror of the future, a reminder that endurance depends not on technology but on meaning. The AI's discovery also underscores the paradox of machine perception. It can reveal truths beyond human bias, yet it cannot comprehend their significance. It can measure but not feel. The terror of the Stonehenge revelation lies partly in that contrast. A machine, indifferent and relentless, stripped away centuries of mystery in a matter of computations. In doing so, it demonstrated both the power and the emptiness of pure intelligence. It showed us that knowledge without empathy produces awe without understanding. The AI solved the riddle, but the solution only deepened the mystery of what it means to be human. As researchers processed the implications, they began noticing ancillary correlations. Coincidences that hinted at something even stranger. The elemental composition of the altar stone matched not only distant geological formations, but also patterns found in ancient tool deposits along the Scottish coast. It appeared that the same type of stone was prized for ritual implements, suggesting that its movement southward was part of a larger symbolic framework. The material itself may have been considered sacred, its properties embodying cosmological significance. In that light, Stonehenge was not merely an observatory or temple, but the heart of a network of spiritual energy extending across the land. This idea complicates our understanding of religion and science in prehistory. It suggests that sacredness and empiricism were never opposed. Both emerged from the same act of perceiving order in chaos. The builders of Stonehenge may have sought communion with the universe not through belief, but through participation. By reproducing celestial order in stone, they reenacted creation itself. The AI's findings thus dissolve the modern boundary between the sacred and the rational, leaving us in a liminal space where every measurement is an invocation, every alignment a prayer. What makes the discovery so difficult to digest is that it blurs the line between the human and the post-human. AI, the most modern expression of abstract intelligence, has unveiled the handiwork of minds that functioned with similar abstraction millennia ago. The machine's logic and the ancient builder's intuition converge across time as though intelligence itself operates according to eternal principles independent of medium. This symmetry provokes an eerie sense of déjà vu. We built a machine to understand the past, and in its calculations, it revealed the structure of our own cognition. The convergence grows more disturbing the deeper one examines it. The AI's data models show fractal relationships between Stonehenge's layout and natural growth patterns. The branching of trees, the spiral of shells, the rhythm of waves. The monument replicates forms found in biology and physics, hinting that its builders perceived unity between life and matter. In recognizing this, we are forced to confront the possibility that consciousness is not a byproduct of evolution, but an inherent pattern within the cosmos. The terror here is metaphysical. The idea that the universe thinks through us, that intelligence is not our possession but our participation in something vast and impersonal. Stonehenge becomes, in this light, a point of contact, an interface between human and cosmic intelligence. The builders, guided by instinct and observation, may have crafted it as a stabilizing node, a resonance chamber aligning human thought with universal order. The AI's discovery resurrects that possibility, reminding us that every monument we raise, every algorithm we build, is an attempt to converse with the unknown. The frightening part is realizing that the conversation never ended, it merely changed languages. As the implications unfurl, even the most grounded scholars feel an undercurrent of dread. If ancient societies achieved such integration of knowledge and environment, their disappearance becomes harder to explain. What force could erase a culture capable of such precision? Perhaps climate, disease, or internal collapse, or perhaps the fading of a consciousness no longer compatible with the changing Earth. The AI's revelations hint that the loss was not physical but perceptual, a dimming of humanity's resonance with the world. We did not outgrow our ancestors, we forgot them. This awareness carries a quiet terror. It implies that knowledge is not cumulative but oscillatory, that enlightenment and amnesia follow each other in endless rhythm. Stonehenge stands as the fossil of a previous awakening, rediscovered by a machine during ours. What comes next may depend on whether we learn to interpret its message as more than data, as a warning that intelligence divorced from harmony leads only to ruin. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us? What are your thoughts on AI finally solving the Stonehenge mystery? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.